Admiral Robert Nash stood at the window of his office in Earth Defense Command headquarters, watching the sunset paint the Rocky Mountains in shades of gold and purple. The year was 2157, and humanity had spread across their solar system, building colonies and defense stations. But nothing in his 30 years of service had prepared him for the news he'd just received. "Sir," his AI assistant's voice broke through his thoughts. "Dr. Wright is here to see you." "Send her in," Nash said, turning from the window. He straightened his dark blue uniform, silver stars catching the dying sunlight. Dr. Alice Wright walked in, her usual calm replaced by barely contained urgency. Her gray lab coat was wrinkled, and her tablet showed complex graphs and numbers that kept changing. Dark circles under her eyes suggested she hadn't slept in days. "Admiral," she said, not waiting for pleasantries, "we have a serious problem." She placed her tablet on his desk, and with a quick gesture, projected a 3D map of nearby star systems. Alpha Centauri glowed bright blue in the center. "What am I looking at, Doctor?" Nash asked, though the sinking feeling in his stomach told him this wasn't going to be good news. 3 days ago, our quantum sensors detected something impossible. Wright zoomed in on Alpha Centauri, where strange, dark purple tears appeared in the fabric of space. "These are dimensional rifts, sir. They're like holes in reality itself." Nash frowned, crossing his arms. "I thought dimensional rifts were just theory. Something from science fiction." "So did we," Wright said, running a hand through her short brown hair. "But these are real. And they're growing." She showed him a time-lapse. The rifts were slowly spreading like cracks in glass. "If they continue at this rate, they'll reach our solar system in 6 months." "What causes something like this?" Nash asked, leaning closer to study the projection. "That's the really interesting part," Wright said, pulling up another display. "These rifts aren't natural. The energy patterns are too regular, too structured. Someone's making them." Nash's head snapped up. "Someone's making tears in space on purpose. Why?" "We think we know," Wright said quietly. She pressed another button on her tablet, and a new image appeared. It showed massive dark shapes moving through the rifts. They looked like cities made of shadow, with geometric patterns that hurt the eyes if you looked at them too long. "What am I looking at?" Nash asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. "We call them the Void Makers," Wright explained. "Our deep space probes captured these images yesterday. They're massive ships, Admiral. Each one is bigger than Earth's moon. And they're using these rifts to move between dimensions." Nash sat down heavily in his chair. "Are you telling me we're looking at an alien invasion?" "Not exactly," Wright said, sitting across from him. "We think it's worse. Our calculations suggest these beings aren't just traveling between dimensions. They're destroying them." She pulled up more data, showing energy readings that even Nash could tell were off the charts. "These rifts are like straws, Admiral. The Void Makers are using them to drain energy from our dimension. They're drinking our universe dry." Nash stood up and walked to his window again. The sun had set now, and the first stars were becoming visible. Somewhere out there, ancient beings were tearing holes in reality itself. "How long?" he asked. "If we don't stop them." Wright's voice was grim. "Maybe a year before the damage becomes irreversible. 3 years maximum before our entire galaxy collapses." Nash turned back to her. "And how exactly are we supposed to fight beings that can tear apart dimensions?" For the first time since she entered his office, Wright smiled. "That's why I'm here, Admiral. We've been working on something. A way to modify our ship's drives to cross dimensional barriers ourselves." She brought up new schematics on her tablet. "The quantum physics team at Luna Base has been studying dimensional theory for years. We never thought we'd need it so soon, but," she shrugged, "we've got working prototypes. Small scale, but they work." "How small scale?" Nash asked. "We've sent probes through to other dimensions and brought them back successfully," Wright said. "The technology works. We just need to scale it up. Way up." Nash nodded slowly, his mind already running through logistics. How many ships could we modify? How quickly? With emergency protocols and full government backing. Wright did some quick calculations on her tablet. We could modify the entire battle fleet in 4 months. Maybe faster if we get help from the Mars shipyards. Nash pressed a button on his desk. Linda, get me a secure line to the president. Priority 1. He looked at Wright. We're going to need every resource we can get. There's one more thing, Admiral, Wright said, her expression serious again. The modifications aren't the hard part. The hard part is going to be finding pilots and crews willing to literally fly into other dimensions. We don't know what's out there. Nash smiled grimly. Doctor, if there's one thing I've learned in my career, it's to never underestimate human courage. When faced with extinction, humanity doesn't run. We fight. He looked out at the stars again, thinking of the battles ahead. Get your team ready, Dr. Wright. I want preliminary modification plans on my desk by morning. We're going to need every advantage we can get. Wright stood, gathering her tablet. Yes, sir. And Admiral. She paused at the door. Thank you for believing me. A lot of people wouldn't have. Doctor, in the last century we've colonized Mars, built cities on Europa, and made first contact with 3 alien species. I've learned that impossible is just a word for something we haven't done yet. After Wright left, Nash remained at his window, watching the stars come out one by one. Somewhere out there, ancient beings were trying to destroy everything humans had built, everything they'd discovered, everything they were. But they were about to learn what so many others had learned before. Humanity didn't go quietly into the night. His computer beeped. The president was waiting on the secure line. Nash took a deep breath and sat down at his desk. He had a lot of explaining to do and even more planning ahead. But first, he took one more look at the stars. You picked the wrong species to mess with, he muttered, then pressed the button to accept the call. The real work was about to begin. In the corridor outside, Dr. Wright was already on her phone, calling her team at Luna Base. They had 4 months to modify Earth's entire battle fleet for dimensional travel. It seemed impossible, but as the Admiral had said, impossible was just another word for something they hadn't done yet. She smiled as she walked toward the transport pad that would take her back to her lab. The Voidmakers might be ancient and powerful, but they were about to learn what humanity could do when pushed into a corner. And if there was one thing humans were good at, it was surviving against impossible odds. The night sky above Earth Defense Command Headquarters blazed with stars, each one a reminder of what they were fighting for. In labs and shipyards across the solar system, lights were about to come on as humanity prepared for its greatest challenge yet. The battle for existence itself was about to begin. Luna Base hummed with activity as Dr. Alice Wright walked through its brightly lit corridors. It had been 2 weeks since her meeting with Admiral Nash, and the base had transformed into a hive of round-the-clock work. Scientists and engineers filled every lab, all focused on one goal, making dimensional travel possible for Earth's battle fleet. Commander Peter Hayes waited for her at the main testing chamber, his tall frame leaning against the observation window. Inside the chamber, a small prototype ship floated in a zero-gravity field, its new drive system glowing with a soft blue light. "Morning, Doctor," Hayes said, handing her a cup of coffee. "Ready to make history?" "Let's hope so," Wright said, taking a grateful sip. "How's the prototype looking?" "Drive's stable," Hayes replied, checking his tablet. "Power levels are holding steady at 95%. Better than yesterday." Wright nodded and pressed the intercom button. "Team, let's begin Test 47. Standard safety protocols." The chamber's massive screens lit up with data as technicians began the startup sequence. The prototype ship's drive pulsed brighter, its blue glow turning almost white. "Power at 100%, a technician called out. "Dimensional field forming." Wright held her breath. They'd tried this 46 times before. Each attempt had taught them something new, but none had achieved a stable dimensional breach. Today needed to be different. The air around the prototype began to shimmer, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. Small purple sparks appeared, dancing around the ship's hull. Field strength increasing, the technician reported. 110%, 120%. Hayes straightened up. That's further than we've ever gotten. The sparks grew larger, connecting into lines of purple energy that wrapped around the prototype. The ship seemed to blur, as if it existed in multiple places at once. 130%, 140%. The technician's voice was tense with excitement. Field is holding steady. Wright gripped her coffee cup tighter. Come on, she whispered. Come on. With a sound like thunder underwater, a small tear appeared in the air in front of the prototype. Unlike the dangerous rifts near Alpha Centauri, this one was controlled, its edges glowing with the same blue light as the drive. We have a stable dimensional breach. The technician's professional tone broke into a cheer, and the whole room erupted in applause. Wright turned to Hayes, grinning. We did it. We actually did it. Don't celebrate yet, Hayes said, but he was smiling too. Let's see if we can send something through. Wright nodded and turned back to the intercom. Begin probe deployment sequence. A small probe, no bigger than a baseball, detached from the prototype side. It moved slowly toward the dimensional breach, its sensors gathering data. Probe approaching breach point, the technician reported. 5 meters, 3, 1. The probe passed through the breach. On the screens, its signal flickered but held steady. Probe successfully transmitted to parallel space, the technician announced. Receiving data stream. All systems normal. This time, Hayes joined in the cheering. Wright quickly scanned the incoming data. The probe was sending back readings from what appeared to be a perfect mirror of their test chamber, except for subtle differences in quantum signatures. Initiating probe recall, the technician said. Everyone watched as the probe's signal moved back toward the breach point. When it popped back into their dimension, looking exactly as it had when it left, the celebration really began. Get Admiral Nash on the line, Wright told Hayes. He needs to see this. 20 minutes later, Nash's hologram stood in the observation room, watching as they ran the test again. Impressive, he said as the probe made another successful round trip. But can we scale it up? Our smallest warship is about 10,000 times larger than that prototype. We can, Wright said confidently. The physics work the same at any scale. We just need more power. Which is why we're starting with the U.S. Valiant, Hayes added. She's got the newest quantum reactor design. Should be enough juice to power a full-sized dimensional drive. Nash nodded slowly. How soon can you begin the modifications? The engineering team is already drawing up the plans, Wright said. Give us 2 weeks to get everything ready, then maybe a month for the actual installation and testing. You've got 1 week for prep, 3 weeks for installation, Nash said firmly. Those rifts near Alpha Centauri are growing faster than we predicted. Wright wanted to argue that they needed more time, but she knew he was right. Yes, sir. We'll make it work. After Nash's hologram disappeared, Hayes looked at Wright. 1 week. We'll work in shifts, she said, already making notes on her tablet. I want our best people on this. The Valiant team needs to understand every detail of how this drive works. I'll handle the crew training, Hayes offered. They need to know what to expect when they cross dimensions. Wright paused. What do you think is actually out there, Peter? In those other dimensions? Hayes shrugged. Could be anything. Mirror universes, alternate timelines, completely alien physics. We just have to make sure our people are ready for whatever they find. And ready to fight the Voidmakers, Wright added quietly. That too. Hayes looked through the observation window at the prototype, still generating its stable dimensional breach. At least now we know we can reach them. The rest is just details. Over the next week, Luna Base barely slept. Engineers and scientists worked around the clock, refining the drive design and running countless simulations. The prototype made hundreds more trips between dimensions, each test adding to their understanding of how dimensional travel worked. The U.S. Valiant arrived right on schedule, its kilometer-long hull casting a shadow over the lunar surface. Construction crews immediately began the modification work, guided by Wright's team's carefully prepared plans. Wright stood in her office late one night, looking out at the Valiant through her window. The ship's hull was opened in several places, showing the sophisticated new equipment being installed. It reminded her of ancient sailing ships in dry dock, being prepared for a long and dangerous voyage. "Quite a sight, isn't it?" Hayes said from her doorway. "It still doesn't seem real sometimes," Wright admitted. "A month ago, dimensional travel was theoretical. Now we're building a fleet that can do it." "That's humanity for you," Hayes said, joining her at the window. "Give us an impossible problem and a deadline, and we'll figure it out." "Let's hope the Void Makers aren't ready for that," Wright said. "They won't be," Hayes assured her. "No one ever is." As they watched, another section of the Valiant's hull lit up as power flowed through the new systems for the first time. Soon, the entire ship would be ready for its first dimensional jump. And after that, the rest of Earth's battle fleet would follow. The war for existence itself was about to enter a new phase, and humanity was determined to be ready. In labs and workshops across Luna Base, people worked tirelessly, knowing that the fate of not just their world, but countless dimensions, rested on their success. The prototype in the test chamber continued its work, breach after breach proving that the impossible was now possible. Soon, much larger ships would follow its path, carrying humanity's hopes and determination into unknown dimensions. And somewhere out there, the Void Makers continued their destructive work, unaware that a young species from a small blue planet was about to challenge their ancient power. The real test was about to begin. The emergency alarms at Earth Defense Command blared through the night, their harsh sound breaking the usual quiet of the Rocky Mountain facility. Admiral Nash rushed to the command center, his uniform hastily buttoned. The massive screen at the front of the room showed a strange object breaking through normal space near Mars orbit. "Report," Nash called out as he entered. "Unknown vessel, sir," Lieutenant Amy Baker said from her station. "It just appeared out of nowhere. No normal space drive signatures we can detect." "Show me," Nash ordered, and the main screen zoomed in on the object. The ship looked nothing like any vessel humans had ever seen. It was organic in shape, like a massive silver leaf drifting through space. Its surface rippled with colors that shouldn't exist in normal space. "Sir," Baker said suddenly, "they're broadcasting. All frequencies, multiple languages, including English." Nash straightened his jacket. "Let's hear it." A voice filled the command center, speaking perfect English, but with an odd echo, as if multiple voices were speaking at once. "People of Earth, we come seeking help. We bring urgent warnings. Please respond." Nash nodded to Baker. "Open a channel." When she gave him the signal, he spoke clearly. "This is Admiral Robert Nash of Earth Defense Command. Identify yourself." "We are representatives of the Galactic Coalition," the voice replied. "We have traveled far, through great danger, to reach you. We must speak in person. The fate of many universes depends on it." Nash looked at his officers. They all knew the stakes. With the Void Makers' rifts growing near Alpha Centauri, they couldn't ignore any potential source of information. "Very well," Nash said. "We'll send you coordinates for a safe landing zone. But be warned, any hostile action will be met with immediate force." "Understood, Admiral. We come in peace and desperation." 3 hours later, Nash stood in a secure meeting room with Dr. Wright and Commander Hayes. Through the reinforced windows, they watched as the alien ship landed in the desert valley below. It moved with impossible grace, settling onto the ground like a feather. A section of the ship's side simply dissolved, and 3 figures emerged. They were tall and slender, with silver-white skin that seemed to shift colors like their ship. Their eyes were large and completely black, but somehow managed to convey both intelligence and worry. "Well," Hayes muttered, "they definitely look like they're from another dimension." The aliens were escorted to the meeting room by a team of security officers. As they entered, Nash noticed they moved with an unusual fluidity, as if gravity affected them differently. "Admiral Nash," the lead alien said, its voice the same echoing chorus they'd heard in the transmission. "I am Speaker Lyra. With me are Navigator Sen and Quantum Master Vex." "Welcome to Earth," Nash replied. "This is Dr. Alice Wright, our head of dimensional physics, and Commander Peter Hayes, our military liaison." Speaker Lyra's eyes fixed on Wright. "You are the one who broke the dimensional barriers." Wright blinked in surprise. "How did you know about that?" "We have been watching," Navigator Sen said. "When we detected your first dimensional breach, we knew we had to come. You don't understand the danger you face." "The Void Makers," Hayes said. "We've seen their rifts near Alpha Centauri." All three aliens shuddered visibly. "Then it's worse than we feared," Quantum Master Vex said. "They're already here. Tell us everything," Nash ordered, gesturing for everyone to sit at the large conference table. Speaker Lyra placed a small device in the center of the table. It projected a hologram showing multiple universes represented as interlinked bubbles of light. "The Void Makers are ancient," Lyra began. "They evolved in a dying universe, billions of years ago. They learned to survive by draining energy from other dimensions, leaving dead universes in their wake." The hologram showed dark shadows moving between the universe bubbles. Where they passed, the bubbles turned gray and collapsed. "They've destroyed thousands of dimensions," Navigator Sen continued. "The Galactic Coalition formed to fight them, but we've never been able to follow them through their rifts. Our technology can't handle dimensional travel." "But yours can," Quantum Master Vex said, looking at Wright. "Your understanding of quantum mechanics is unique, different from any species we've encountered." Wright leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "Most species develop space travel first, then try to understand quantum mechanics," Vex explained. "Humans did it backward. You focused on understanding the smallest parts of reality before reaching for the stars. This gave you a different perspective. A perspective that might save us all," Lyra added. "Your dimensional drive technology is crude by our standards, but it works. It's stable. Nothing we've created has ever achieved that." Nash absorbed this information slowly. "You're saying we're the only ones who can fight the Void Makers in their own territory?" "Yes," all three aliens said in unison. "That's exactly what we're saying." Hayes let out a low whistle. "No pressure." "How long do we have?" Wright asked. Navigator Sen manipulated the hologram, showing the spread of the rifts. "At current rates, they'll begin active harvesting within 3 Earth months. Once that starts, the damage becomes irreversible. The Valiant will be ready for its first dimensional jump test in 2 weeks," Wright said, looking at Nash. "If it works, we can modify the rest of the fleet within a month after that." Nash stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the alien ship gleaming in the desert sun. "You've traveled between dimensions to warn us. Will you fight with us?" "Our ships cannot follow where you must go," Lyra said sadly. "But we can offer information, resources, and coordination with the Coalition fleet in normal space." "Tell us everything you know about the Void Makers," Hayes said. "Their tactics, their weaknesses, anything that might help." As the aliens began sharing their knowledge, Wright studied their hologram technology with fascination. But her mind was already racing ahead to the modifications they'd need to make to their plans based on this new information. Outside, the sun set behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the desert. The alien ship continued to shimmer with impossible colors, a reminder that the universe, or rather, the multiverse, was far stranger than humanity had imagined. But humans were about to prove just how adaptable they could be. In shipyards across the solar system, the battle fleet was being prepared for a war unlike any in history. And now, with the knowledge brought by their new allies, they had a fighting chance. The fate of countless dimensions would rest on humanity's shoulders. But as Nash looked at his team, Wright's brilliant mind already working on improvements to their technology, Hayes planning battle strategies, he felt a surge of pride. Humanity hadn't asked for this responsibility, but they would rise to meet it. The warning had been delivered. Now it was time to prepare for war. Captain Susan Martinez stood on the bridge of the U.S. Valiant, watching as another group of warships arrived through the Jupiter jump gate. The massive ships moved with precision, their newly modified hulls gleaming under Jupiter's distant light. Each one carried the same experimental dimensional drive that the Valiant had tested successfully just days ago. "That's the Mars Defense Squadron arriving," her first officer, Lieutenant John Carter, reported. 15 more ships ready for final checks. Martinez nodded, making notes on her tablet. "How many does that bring us to?" 372 ships fully modified and combat ready, Carter said. "Another 128 still in final preparation. We'll hit our target of 500 right on schedule." The bridge crew worked quietly at their stations, monitoring the massive fleet gathering operation. Never in human history had so many warships assembled in one place. The space around Jupiter was filled with vessels of every size, from massive carriers to agile destroyers. "Captain," the communications officer called out, "incoming transmission from Earth Defense Command. Admiral Nash wants to speak with you." "Put him through to my ready room," Martine said, heading to the small office just off the bridge. Nash's hologram appeared as soon as she entered. "Captain, how are the fleet preparations going?" "On schedule, sir," Martines reported. "The Mars Squadron just arrived. Their dimensional drives all check out according to Dr. Wright's specifications." "Good." Nash's expression was serious. "Because we just got new data from our coalition allies. The Voidmakers are accelerating their timeline. We need to be ready to move in 72 hours. Martinez felt her heart skip a beat, but kept her voice steady. "Understood, sir. We'll be ready." After the transmission ended, Martinez took a moment to collect her thoughts. 72 hours to prepare the largest fleet action in human history. And not just any fleet action. They would be breaking through dimensional barriers to face an enemy that had destroyed countless universes. She walked back onto the bridge. "All hands, this is the captain speaking," she announced over the ship-wide comm. "We have new orders. Fleet launch has been moved up to 72 hours from now. I know we've trained for this, and I know we're ready. Let's prove it." Martine's out. The next 3 days passed in a blur of activity. Ships arrived constantly through the jump gates, their crews working around the clock to complete final preparations. Dr. Wright and Commander Hayes arrived on the Valiant to oversee the installation of the fleet's central command and control systems. "The dimensional drive modifications are holding steady across all ships," Wright reported during the final briefing. "The Coalition's data helped us improve the stability by almost 40%. "And the tactical systems?" Martines asked. Hayes brought up a holographic display of the fleet. "All ships are linked through quantum-encrypted channels. Even when we cross dimensions, we'll maintain perfect communication and coordination." Martinez studied the fleet display. 500 of humanity's most powerful warships, arranged in a formation designed to maximize their dimensional drive efficiency. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "The Coalition fleet has taken up position near Saturn," Hayes continued. "They'll handle any Voidmaker forces that appear in normal space while we make our dimensional assault." Speaker Lyra's ship had remained on Earth, but the alien leader sent regular updates through quantum channels. The latest message was playing on a screen nearby. "Our sensors confirm increased Voidmaker activity near the Alpha Centauri rifts. They know we're coming, but they don't know what humans are capable of." As the final hours ticked down, Martinez walked through her ship's corridors, speaking with crew members and checking preparations. The Valiant had been her home for 5 years, but now it felt different. The new dimensional drive systems hummed with a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. She found Dr. Wright in the main engineering bay, running final checks on the drive systems. "How does it feel?" Martins asked, "seeing your theoretical work turned into this." Wright looked up from her screens. "Terrifying and amazing at the same time. When I started studying quantum mechanics, I never imagined it would lead to this." "None of us did," Martinez agreed. "But here we are, about to make history. Again." "If we survive," Wright added quietly. "We'll survive," Martinez said firmly. "We have to. Not just for Earth, but for every dimension these things have threatened." The final hours passed quickly. Ships moved into their assigned positions, crews ran last-minute drills, and weapons systems were charged and ready. The fleet hung in space around Jupiter like a constellation of man-made stars. On the Valiant's bridge, Martinez sat in her command chair, watching the countdown timer. Next to her, Dr. Wright and Commander Hayes monitored their specialized stations. "All ships report ready," Carter announced. Martinez took a deep breath. "Fleet Command, this is Captain Martinez. Begin final launch sequence." 500 ships powered up their dimensional drives simultaneously. The space around Jupiter lit up with quantum energy, creating a spectacle visible from Earth's telescopes. "Drive synchronization at 100%, Wright reported. "Dimensional breach calculations complete. All weapons systems online," Hayes added. "Fleet tactical network stable." Martinez looked at the main screen, where the massive fleet stretched out before them. Humanity's greatest achievement, about to attempt something never done before in the history of any universe they knew of. "Fleet command to all ships," she said clearly. "Remember your training. Remember what we're fighting for. Every dimension, every universe, every reality is counting on us. Let's show the Void Makers why they should have picked another universe to mess with." She paused for a moment, then gave the order that would be remembered for as long as humanity existed. "All ships, activate dimensional drives. Take us in." The universe held its breath as 500 ships prepared to tear a hole in reality itself. The greatest battle in human history was about to begin, and no one, not even their alien allies, knew exactly what waited for them on the other side. But they were about to find out. 500 ships hung in space near Jupiter, their dimensional drives glowing with building power. On the bridge of the U.S. Valiant, Captain Martinez watched as reality itself began to bend around them. "All ships report dimensional field strength at maximum," Lieutenant Carter announced, his voice steady despite the tension. Dr. Wright's hands moved quickly over her control panel. "Quantum signatures are aligned. Beginning breach sequence." The space in front of the fleet started to ripple, like waves on a pond. Colors that shouldn't exist in normal space danced across the view screens. Commander Hayes kept his eyes on the tactical display, watching as 500 green dots moved in perfect formation. "First phase complete," Wright called out. "Dimensional barrier showing signs of weakness." Exactly as predicted. Martinez gripped her chair's armrests. "All ships, maintain formation. Push forward on my mark." The ripples in space grew stronger. Through the main viewer, they could see strange shapes moving just beyond the veil of reality. It was like looking through a waterfall made of light and shadow. "Barrier thickness at 50%, Wright reported. 40%. 30. Suddenly, all the ship's sensors screamed warnings. Red alerts flashed across every screen. "Multiple quantum disturbances detected," Carter shouted. "Something's coming through." Before anyone could react, massive dark shapes tore through the weakened dimensional barrier. They were Void Maker ships, each one bigger than a small moon. Their black hulls seemed to drink in light itself. "They knew we were coming," Hayes said grimly, already bringing weapons systems online. Martinez's voice cut through the chaos. "Stay in formation. This is what we trained for. All ships, battle stations." The Earth fleet's response was immediate. Weapons powered up across 500 ships, targeting systems locked onto the massive enemy vessels. 3 Void Maker ships detected, Hayes reported. "They're trying to flank us." Martinez smiled grimly. "Not today. Execute Pattern Delta 7. The human fleet moved like a single organism, splitting into 3 groups while maintaining their dimensional field alignment. The Voidmaker ships, despite their size, seemed surprised by the coordinated movement. They didn't expect us to be able to maneuver while generating a dimensional field, Wright said, a note of pride in her voice. Their own ships have to stay still to cross dimensions. Then let's use that advantage, Martinez ordered. All ships, continue breach sequence while maintaining combat formation. The space around both fleets erupted in weapons fire. The Voidmakers launched streams of dark energy that could tear ships apart at the quantum level. But the human fleet's dimensional fields, originally designed for transport, proved to be excellent shields. Their weapons are partially phased into other dimensions, Wright explained quickly, but so are we now. They can't tear us apart if we're existing in the same dimensional state. Hayes coordinated the fleet's response. Human weapons, enhanced by their partial dimensional state, actually managed to damage the massive enemy ships. Where their beams struck, the Voidmakers' dark hulls cracked, leaking strange energies into space. Barrier thickness at 20%, Wright announced. We can punch through. Martinez opened a channel to the entire fleet. All ships, full power to dimensional drives. We're going through. The combined power of 500 dimensional drives focused on a single point in space. The barrier between dimensions, already weakened, began to tear open. Voidmakers attempting to close the breach. Wright shouted. Not happening, Martinez replied. All forward batteries. Target their dimensional generators. Fire. The human fleet released a devastating barrage. The Voidmaker ships, caught between maintaining their own dimensional stability and trying to stop the humans, couldn't dodge. Their massive hulls shuddered under the impact. Breach is stabilizing, Wright reported excitedly. 10 seconds to transition. The tear in reality grew larger, showing glimpses of another dimension beyond. Strange lights and impossible colors poured through. 5 seconds. The Voidmaker ships launched a desperate final attack. Dark energy beams lashed out at the human fleet. Shields holding, Hayes reported. We're too far into the dimensional shift for their weapons to fully affect us. 3, 2, 1. Martinez's voice rang out clear and strong. All ships, punch it. 500 human warships surged forward as one. The dimensional breach swallowed them in a cascade of light and shadow. For a moment, reality itself seemed to hold its breath. Then they were through. The fleet emerged into somewhere else. The stars were different colors here. Light behaved strangely, creating halos around every ship. But they had made it, and they were still in perfect formation. Status report, Martinez called out. All ships accounted for, Hayes said, sounding almost surprised. No losses. Formation is holding steady. Dimensional transition complete, Wright added. Drive systems stable. We did it. We actually did it. Martinez allowed herself a small smile. Where are the Voidmakers? 3 signatures detected, Carter reported. They followed us through their own rifts. But they're falling behind. Our transition was cleaner than theirs. On the main screen, they could see the massive enemy ships struggling to maintain position in this new dimension. Their usual smooth movement was replaced by awkward corrections, like they were having trouble adapting to the different physics here. They're not used to others being here, Wright realized. This is their private hunting ground. They never expected to have to fight here. Martinez studied the tactical display. The Voidmaker ships were regrouping, but slowly. The human fleet had a window of opportunity. Send word to all ships, she ordered. Move to attack positions. Let's show them why you don't underestimate humanity. The fleet split into attack formations, moving with precision that seemed to surprise the Voidmakers even more. In this strange dimension, where reality itself worked differently, humanity's adaptability proved to be their greatest weapon. Their dimensional generators are exposed, Hayes reported. They had to open their shields too wide to follow us. Martinez nodded. Then that's our target. All ships, prepare for coordinated strike. Let's make this count. As the fleet moved into position, Martinez looked at her crew. Human faces lit by the strange light of another dimension, doing something that should have been impossible. But they were here, ready to fight for not just their universe, but all universes. The battle that would decide the fate of existence itself was about to begin, and humanity had just proven they were ready for it. The battle raged across dimensions in ways that defied normal space and time. Captain Martinez watched from the Valiant's bridge as the human fleet engaged the massive Voidmaker ships. The strange light of this other dimension made everything look like it was underwater, but the crew worked with steady determination. Enemy ships are trying to reform their defensive line, Commander Hayes reported. Their dimensional generators are still exposed. Dr. Wright studied her readings intently. Captain, I'm detecting massive energy buildups in their systems. They're trying to start their harvesting process. Martinez's eyes narrowed. Not on our watch. All ships. Execute attack pattern Echo. Target those generators. The human fleet moved with practiced precision. 500 ships split into smaller attack groups, each one targeting a specific weak point on the Voidmaker vessels. The massive enemy ships tried to respond, but they were clearly struggling with the different physics of this dimension. They'd never had to fight here, Wright realized. They'd just come here to harvest energy. Their ships aren't designed for combat in other dimensions. A blast from one of the Voidmaker ships caught a human destroyer, but its dimensional shields held. The technology designed for travel was proving to be an excellent defense. Fleet Group Alpha, clear shot at the lead ship's generator, Hayes called out. Take it, Martinez ordered. Concentrated fire from 100 human ships struck the exposed generator. The Voidmaker ship's dark hull cracked, leaking streams of strange energy into the dimensional space around it. Direct hit, Carter announced. Their power levels are dropping. But the Voidmakers weren't finished. Their damaged ship released a pulse of dark energy that rippled through space, making reality itself shudder. They're trying to collapse this dimension, Wright shouted. If they can't harvest it, they'll destroy it. Martinez's voice cut through the chaos. Dr. Wright, options. Wright's hands flew over her controls. They're harvesting technology. It works by creating a feedback loop in the dimensional energy field. If we can overload it. How? Hayes asked. A concentrated burst of quantum energy directly into their collectors. But we have to get close. Really close. Martinez didn't hesitate. Helm, bring us in. All ships, cover the Valiant. The massive human warship drove forward, protected by a screen of smaller vessels. The Voidmaker ships fired continuously, their dark energy weapons leaving trails of twisted space behind them. Dimensional shields at 60%, Carter reported. 50%. Almost in range, Wright said. The collectors are those spiral patterns on their hulls. We need to hit all 3 ships simultaneously. Martinez opened a channel to the fleet. Battle groups Bravo and Charlie. Target the other 2 ships. Time your strikes with ours. Let's end this. The Valiant shuddered as another blast struck their shields, but they kept pushing forward, along with the other attack groups targeting the remaining Voidmaker ships. Their energy buildup is reaching critical levels, Wright warned. If this doesn't work. It'll work, Martinez said firmly. Humanity didn't come this far to fail now. The Valiant closed to point-blank range with the lead Voidmaker ship. At this distance, it looked like a city made of shadows and nightmares, its dark surface writhing with impossible patterns. Energy weapons charge, Hayes reported. Battle groups in position. Now, Martinez ordered. 3 concentrated beams of quantum energy, enhanced by their dimensional drives, struck the Voidmaker ship's collectors. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then Wright's console lit up with warnings. It's working. The feedback loop is building. Their own harvesting energy is turning back on them. The Voidmaker ships began to pulse with light that shouldn't exist. Their dark hulls cracked further, energy pouring out in massive streams. "All ships, fall back," Martinez commanded. "Maximum speed." The human fleet retreated in perfect order as the Voidmaker ships began to break apart. Their attempts to harvest dimensional energy had backfired catastrophically. 15 seconds to total system failure, Wright counted down. 10, 5. The explosion, when it came, was like nothing any human had ever seen. The Voidmaker ships didn't just explode. They unraveled, their matter and energy spreading across dimensional barriers and disappearing into the void they had tried to create. When the light faded, the human fleet hung in formation, all ships accounted for. Where the Voidmaker ships had been, there was nothing but empty space, now calm and stable. "Did we?" Carter began. "Yes," Wright said, checking her readings. "Their harvesting technology is completely destroyed. The dimensional rifts are already beginning to heal themselves." Martinez opened a channel to the fleet. "This is Fleet Command. All ships report status." The reports came in quickly. Some ships had taken damage, but there were no losses. Humanity had faced its greatest challenge and emerged victorious. "Preparing for dimensional jump home," Wright announced. "The breach point is still stable." As the fleet aligned for their return journey, a message came through their quantum communications. It was Speaker Lyra, her multiple voices filled with joy and awe. "You did it," the alien leader said. "The Coalition's sensors confirm the Voidmaker's destruction. Their rifts are closing across all known dimensions. Humanity has saved not just one universe, but countless realities." Martinez looked at her crew, humans who had just made history in ways no one could have imagined. "Take us home," she ordered quietly. The return journey was smooth, their dimensional drives now operating with practiced efficiency. As they emerged back into their home dimension, they saw the Coalition fleet waiting for them near Saturn. The alien ships flashed their lights in celebration. Earth's telescopes caught the moment the fleet returned, 500 ships breaking through reality itself to come home victorious. The images would be remembered for generations. Humanity's battle fleet, silhouetted against Saturn's rings, having just won a war for the existence of all things. In the days that followed, the Coalition formally invited Earth to join their organization. Humanity would help guard the dimensional barriers, using their unique understanding of quantum physics to prevent any future threats to the multiverse. Dr. Wright's dimensional drive technology was shared with the Coalition. Under Earth's guidance, Commander Hayes began training other species in dimensional combat techniques, though everyone hoped they would never be needed again. And Captain Martinez stood in her ready room on the Valiant, looking out at the stars. They looked different to her now, knowing what lay between and beyond them. But they were safe, along with all the other stars in all the other dimensions that humans would probably never see. "Captain," Carter's voice came over the comm. "The celebration ceremony is starting in 10 minutes. "On my way," she replied. As she walked to the shuttle bay, Martinez thought about everything that had happened. Humanity had faced an impossible challenge and found a way to overcome it. They had proven themselves to be not just survivors, but protectors of all existence. The day Earth's battle fleet broke dimensional barriers had changed everything. But one thing remained constant: humanity's determination to face any challenge, adapt to any situation, and fight for what was right, across any number of dimensions. It was truly humanity's finest hour, and it was just the beginning.